Yo, what up guys, it's Theo Stewart, and today I am talking about world building. World building is actually my second video that I ever posted, like almost 2 years ago, over 2 years ago, whatever. It's linked up over here, if y'all want to go check that out. And it was literally like 8 minutes long, so there's a lot more I could talk about. You know, me and my videos, they're usually longer. At that point I was trying to keep them shorter. But yeah, it's there if y'all want to go kind of check that out. I'm kind of going to go over basically the same stuff, more condensed in a way, and then I'm going to actually work on it on my computer, which is right in front of me. Kind of showing y'all some of my process, I guess. Y'all get to watch me create more in-depth world building for one of my lands of the Abyss. I'm going to be working on Gia, which is a set of islands. I plan on writing a story based there. It's been mentioned, my METAGORE series is going to be mentioned, some others, but I'm actually going to flesh out more, maybe not completely, but more the world in itself. So yeah, but before I get started, I'm just going to kind of briefly talk about some of the stuff I'm going to be working on and, you know, explain it a little bit or whatever. One, you don't have to create an entire planet. I know I am, because I plan on writing a multitude of stories. I've got over 20 something story ideas that take place in this world, on different places, different lands, stuff. So I will eventually need to create this whole land. I've got mostly the land masses kind of mapped out, but have not fleshed out all of them. I've fleshed out METAGORE since I'm working on that. I've fleshed out a couple others. I've fleshed out Live Fear some or whatever, since one of my side projects that I've been working on a lot, or at least a lot more than the others, takes place there, as well as Panora, because that's kind of a big influence to me for my METAGORE series, even though it's not actually in my METAGORE series. But just knowing some of the stuff over there kind of helps me write it. So I fleshed out that, and you know, a few other little minor details of some of the other places. But for y'all, if your story does not take place over the entire world, you do not have to flesh out the entire world. I do believe you need to create and think of more for your world building than what you actually put in your story. So you do need to know a lot about it, and how everything works and all that. And don't put everything in your books or whatever, because that becomes an info dump. But you don't have to do an entire planet if that's not what your story calls for. Just a certain town or a certain segment, subdivision of the town or whatever, you know. That's all you need for your story. That's all you really need to actually, you know, develop. You might want to know how the government works, if it influences stuff. But you don't have to go too far and too in depth. Some of the stuff that you will need is the environment. You know, what kind of environment is your land set in? What kind of terrain is it? Because that will kind of affect how your citizens and stuff will live, and you know, how they behave and how they survive. You know, if it's a lot of mountain areas, more likely it's going to be colder, more rough terrain, not as much, you know, vegetation, possibly, stuff like that. If it's more of a desert, you know, not as much vegetation, it's very hot and humid. So you want to kind of know that kind of stuff. Like I was mentioning with the climates and stuff, the weather, what kind of weather you want for your stuff, as well as seasons. How does your season work? Is it like a normal, you know, hot in the summer, cold in the winter? Do you have longer summers and short winters? You know, how does that actually play out in your world? And you know, that will have an effect on different elements of your world itself, as well as your environment can also determine what kind of resources you have, what kind of economy is set up around where you live. I know, especially in my METAGORE series, I've kind of really delved deep into this for their economy. The kingdom that's in the forest and stuff, their economy and their resources is heavily relied upon lumber. The ones up in the mountains is more stonework and masonry, you know, stuff like that. The ones in the swamps that are more fishermen, that's theirs. They got underwater crops and they fish. That's, you know, their economy. That's what their resources are. For the people that live in the plains, they're farmers type ordeal, you know. So it kind of depends what kind of environment and, you know, terrain you have can heavily affect your, you know, resources. Another thing you'll want to think about is naming your towns and cities. You know, if you want it to seem more realistic, you want to kind of use more common names, maybe kind of splice them together, or just some typical names that, you know, you can hear all over the place, you know, Jonestown, you know, whateverville, something like that, you know, just kind of take these normal names and stuff and kind of mesh them together to get it to what you want. But if it's fantasy, I would suggest doing stuff very unique and specific to your story if you can. Not everything has to be tied into your story itself, but you do want it to be unique, and, you know, you don't want it so common as people's like, oh, what book is that from, you know? They kind of get it mixed up or whatever. You want it, you know, oh yeah, that's from that, you know, type stuff. So you want to kind of think about that kind of stuff when you're naming stuff. Now that we've talked about kind of the location, in a sense, of your world or your town, your kingdom, whatever you're creating, what are the inhabitants like? You know, the races that are in it. If it's fantasy, there's all kinds of different races. What kind of races actually live there, you know? How does that environment affect them? For me, in my METAGORE series, I don't have demons living in Braham, because Braham is a mountain area with a lot of snow, a lot of cold, and demons can't survive there. So they don't live there. They live more in the volcanic wastelands and the deserts and stuff because of the humidity. So that's how your terrain and your environment, your weather, all of that affects on who lives there, which therefore affects how your economy drives or whatever, because demons are very massive and aggressive people. They, you know, in my world, eat a lot of meat and stuff instead of plants, so they're not going to grow a lot of plants because they can't grow a lot of plants. So it all kind of feeds into each other. And then if you have multiple races, how do the different races interact with each other, you know? Are they on good terms? Are they not on good terms? Are they kind of, I go my way, you go your way, no harm, no foul type ordeal? Or, you know, how do they interact with each other? As well as just races, you know, your flora and your fauna and stuff, you know, what kind of plants and stuff do they have? I haven't went too far into that with my world building. I see it mostly like the plants like we have here on Earth. There are a few different elements. There are a couple different names and terms and stuff for some plants, but it's not like heavily populated with those plants. I do have bioluminescent plants and some lands of the abyss or whatever, but mostly it's heavily influenced by our natural plant life and stuff that we have. But when it comes to the fauna, I have it all over the place. You know, everything fauna and race wise are fantasy for me, so I've created all these different types. So you want to kind of think of that, you know, because those also in the wild shape the environment, you know, how they live and stuff. I have dragons in my world. You know, if you have dragons that breathe fire that live in the forest, more likely you're going to have forest fires. So you're going to have a patch of the forest, not as, you know, dense with leaves and stuff, because it's going to have been burnt off and stuff. More likely, if you have dragons living in, you know, more of a rocky area or a clay area or something with harder ground, you might have more claw marks and teeth marks where they chewed on stuff. If you go the route that dragons use stones and stuff to ignite their bowels for them to be able to breathe fire and stuff like that. So you got to kind of think of how these wildlife and how these other races that you've created interact with the environment to really build your world. Also, religion. You know, there might be a few characters in your story or whatever that don't believe in religion. You know, if that's not really the main purpose, if that's not really anything that you want to dive into, then don't put it in there or whatever. But if you are trying to flesh out a world as a whole and you're going to have a large cast, more than likely at least one of them is going to be religious to some degree. It doesn't have to be a real world religion, especially if it's fantasy, you're making up this world, or even if it's fictional and you're still making up this world. It does not have to be, you know, a real religion. You can make up your own religion, but, you know, religions also shape the economy and shape how people live and the cultures and stuff of all these different places. So you want to kind of see how that's intertwined and stuff and how that will shape going back to METAGORE, one of the kingdoms of METAGORE is Alberon, which is a plains land. In the history, they used to have just two gods. They had Adazul and Trillis. That's the two gods that they believed in. And Adazul was the god over the wildlife and stuff, and Trillis was the goddess over the plant life. And they heavily survived off of, hunting some meat, but mostly growing crops. And that was their two main things, is food sources for them. So that's what their gods reflected and stuff like that. So you want to kind of see how that intertwines all together, as well as with religion and some other stuff. You could start doing holidays. Are there celebrations for these gods or goddesses or whatever? Or are there holidays for political people? Are there holidays for certain historical events that have taken place? What are these celebrations? What are they like? Different celebrations can be celebrated differently depending where you are and all this stuff. So you can think of all that, as well as languages, dialects, slang words, whatever. In my world, I have a numerous amounts of languages that I'm creating for different areas. I haven't went as far as dialect and some slang and stuff like that yet for those, but there are a bunch of different languages. So that's something else. How do these people speak? How they were raised, where they grew up at, their surroundings, the environment they was raised. All of that can affect the dialect and the slang, how someone talks, even if you're not creating an actual language itself, word choice and stuff like that. Also, what kind of government does your world have? Is it a dictatorship? Is it a democracy? Is it a monarchy? What kind of system of laws and how are they governed and carried out and all that stuff? So you can think about that, because that will also kind of shape the economy and the resources and all this kind of stuff as well. As well as if you're making a magic system, if you're writing fantasy, what are the magic laws? A lot of readers don't like magic that just seems to be able to do whatever. It doesn't have to be a hard magic system or doesn't have to be a soft magic system, but as long as there's some boundary, so it doesn't seem like your characters are just doing whatever they want, because then it just kind of takes your reader out of the story. So I'm like, oh, well, I'm not really going to fear that something bad's going to happen, because, for all I know, they could just conjure up some magic spell and, everything's all good, type ordeal, like a safety net type effect. And you don't want that. You want them to kind of know the boundaries, not, if you don't want to necessarily tell them, you don't have to. If you want a wide range of abilities or whatever, not really have to work on exactly how all of it is capable of happening, you don't have to. But at least show your reader that you have thought about it and you're doing these choices on purpose. And the last thing I like to do for my world building is building the history. I love history building for my lands. I have blogs up on my website, wherever, for METAGORE, for each of the different regions and kingdoms of METAGORE, where like a history that's a couple thousand years long, of some of the main events and stuff, and some of the rulers and how long they served and stuff like that. I like doing those kind of things, and building out your history helps you actually kind of know more about the economy and the government and just the normal public's opinion on their governmental figures or other matters. If you have a lot of history in a certain area with a lot of wars, the people in that community will have been used to it. Not so much as they're okay with it, they might despise it, they might have that hatred towards it, they don't like the conflict, they don't like constantly not knowing if they're safe or not. But that affects them, what the history is. You don't have to go into detail like, oh, this war happened and this war happened, this and that. But if there's all these wars, you can build that tension within the character and maybe even some dialogue hints here and there. All right. So, like I said, I am going to work on some of this for Asia. I've already got some of this kind of mapped out in my mind. I've got one holiday already created, you'll see. And I've got somewhere the different races and faunas, so I'm not really going to go into that too much on here. But I will kind of fill out some of the other stuff. Might be 1 or 2 words, might be full paragraphs. As well as, like I was talking about, that history that I like doing. I have a list of random, events that could possibly, affect a place or whatever. And there could be more or whatever. You don't have to just use these, but this is what I usually kind of base mine off of and kind of like, okay, I can see where this could happen. And then I kind of plug it in and change it and make it more relevant to my story, my world, and all that stuff. So if y'all want, I will go ahead and link that down below as well, or not link it, but I'll put a list of all that's info, if you want, on there, down there. So yeah. But yeah, let's jump over onto my screen. Alright. So like I said, this is for Aegea. For the environment, we got it's islands. So islands. Kind of tropical. Got a lot of, I guess, foresty like type of places. Some plains lands. Plainslands was 2 words. Y'all will find out that I can't spell. I suck at spelling. That's why we'll get spell check. I'm a writer, not a fucking spell Nazi, whatever. Yeah. I'm a writer, not a speller. I've never won a spelling bee in my life. I probably never got past the first round in a spelling bee, so yeah. Climate and weather, kind of tropical. I know that's not really saying much, but I mean, some rain showers. Mostly warm. It's not hot. It's not cold. Economy. That might leave blank. The economy's well enough off. They're not rich nation. It's a bunch of small islands. This and that. Go ahead and put that there. Fishers. Because they do fish. A bunch of islands. They do a lot of sailing, traveling, stuff like that. So mark that down. For major cities, I don't remember. Let's see here. I can see all this shit. I am just going to do the capital. Jazli. Jazli. Is that how I spelled it? I don't even know how to spell my own shit. Yeah, Jazli. So yeah. I'm just gonna do that. Put it down, that's a capital. Yeah, I don't know if that's capital letter, capital city. Well, races I'm gonna kind of skip over. Fauna I'm skipping over because like I said, I've got that written down somewhere else. This is a new document, as I can tell. Since it says document 1, I haven't saved it or anything like that. Religion, they believe in METAGORE. Holidays. This is the only one I've came up with so far. I don't know why it's like that. Ban Vabasht, which means Day of the Petals. I'll get to the languages here in a minute, but they do speak a different language. Obviously, whenever I write it, it's going to be in English. I'm not going to write the whole story in their language. But they do speak a different language, which is Eries. Let's see here. Eries. I think that's how I spelled it. I could be wrong. Yeah, I know what I mean. But Vabasht is Eries, means Day of the Petals. It's a solemn religious holiday celebrated on the summer solstice. It commemorates the discovery of Aegea. It is associated with love, vengeance, and nobility. It is also associated with crocus flowers, which I don't know if you know what crocus flowers are. I don't even have any saved, so I might. Crocus flower. But it's a violet, a purple. Yeah, here we go. Flower. As I can see. Ooh, I like this one. But it's a purple flower with a little yellow whatever stuff in the center. I wasn't a science person, so I don't know what that's called. I probably did at one point. Anyways, it's a crocus flower. It's violet with a little bit of yellow. And Aegea, their colors, something I didn't mention, I like in flags as well, and their banner. Their banner is purple, like a royal blue purple, with a golden cross. So their kingdom colors are purple and gold, and a crocus flower represents that perfectly. So yeah, but it's associated with crocus flowers, the color gold and color violet, like I just said. Celebration lasts from dawn till dusk, so it's one day, from morning to night. Traditions include public contests of strength amongst the men and awarding the winners a marriage of a noble woman. So it is almost like Olympic type games, gladiator type games or whatever. Different stuff like that, to test men's strength and agility and speed and stuff like that. And in Aegea, the women are held as superior than men. So they have a queen, and they have, all of their political powers are female. So it's a high honor for a man to be able to marry into one of them. And this is the only way you can. They don't trust themselves to, not fall in love with the wrong person. So they only marry people that win these contests, wherever they think if someone can prove their loyalty or their love or whatever by doing all these strength competitions and winning, that they deserve to, be married to them. Commoners don't do that because, this is strictly for people of power. So commoners would do whatever, they could fall in love with whatever. So that is one of the holidays. I figure that will be a little bit, I had originally thought about that being the center point for my story, Aegea, but I also wanted to do some other stuff that's incorporated some of the other plant life, because there are a few plants and stuff like that in Aegea that's not like ours, and they do work on different chemical type contraptions that they make out of their plants and soils and stuff like that. Languages, like I said, Eries, the government, it's ruled by a queen. Ruled by a queen. Other political powers are female. Stuff like that. And then history of the land. Like I said, here is a list of different things that I have kind of conjured up to kind of get a pretty good idea of different things. You can twist these in different ways. And it covers a lot of different, aspects of different stuff. We have a religion dies, you could have a religion that kind of fades out. No more people believe in it, whatever. An army uprising, martial law, stuff like that. City founded, somebody could establish a new city. Not necessarily, they went out and it's like, oh, hey, there's a city here. Which could happen, if you want to like ancient ruin type ordeal, just trying to find the city of Atlantis or something like that. More like for people saying, you know what, we're going to settle here, we're going to build a city, and this is where we're going to live type ordeal. Death of a god. If your religion has gods that are actual beings that can die. Like I was talking about earlier, in Alberun they had two gods, Adazul and Trillis, and they believed them to be real, and Adazul was actually represented by an actual Strix, and the Lyrics had came over it and slaughtered it, so, for them, that was the death of a god. There's a epidemic. I don't know when anybody ever has epidemics anymore, but apparently that used to be a thing. Exploration travel, which is actually how Aegea was founded, was from another land deciding to send off, people to explore the unknown. And they came across these islands and established it in the name of that kingdom, and eventually just kind of became its own entity. Famine, kind of, I guess, not necessarily like the epidemic, but the Black Plague, some other type of thing like that, or just droughts and stuff like that, and there's not much, plantation for people to live off of. Gaining of land, whether it's through war, they conquered this land, they did that. You sell land to somebody, you buy land, whatever, things like that. Immigration, people moving from one place to another, adding diversity to your world in a sense. Important birth, if it's, I think of like the Savior's Champion from Generosity, the Savior is born or whatever, and all this. That's like a good political, religious figure, and that would be classified as an important birth. That would be something that they would document in their history books. This person was born on this day. So stuff like that. Important weddings, when people get married. Like I was talking about, the queens and stuff, and the other political powers, the other females in positions of power, they marry people that win these tournaments. So that would be an important wedding. It's political power, marrying these champions and stuff. Loss of land, which kind of goes with that. Gaining of land, just on the opposite end. Major curse affecting entire nation. It doesn't even have to be the entire nation, just a major curse in general. Military invention. I know in my METAGORE series, Darius is basically inventing these different military type of weapons for my world had not been invented yet, or not used at this scale in a sense. And it's not really told what it is in the first book. It's mentioned some in the second book, like some of them, but in the third book you actually see them in use and stuff. But these different military weaponry, different siege weapons and stuff like that. If you are starting to get into the era where people start using artillery, like actual guns and gunpowder and stuff, that could be an invention for them. If they've only known like melee weapons and bow and arrows and stuff, and now you get into guns and stuff. So yeah, you could do that. A monster activity. It could be like some presence of something. You don't even have to show the monster, just something had some type of effects. It's something, a myth, of legend, something like that. Which is something I never mentioned earlier, and I hadn't mentioned in that previous video. But when you're world building, some different myths and legends and tall tales of stuff, which a lot of that stuff derives from something at one point usually, and it's just skewed off, or it could be actually what they believed it to have been, and just might have not have been as much, and stuff like that could go into it, and that would all be based off of the history of the land. Different stories you tell people kind of scare them or something like that. So yeah, a murder of a ruler, somebody killed the king or the queen or whoever. A natural disaster like an earthquake or tornado or wildfire, like I mentioned earlier. Hurricanes, tsunamis, landslide, avalanches, depending where your story takes place, what kind of environment it is, what kind of natural disaster it could have, and how that would impact the economy and the citizens and all that. A new dynasty, the change of the political power and stuff. How does this new ruler rule differently from the previous, and all this new political system? It's not just a new ruler, it's just completely, you could have been a democracy and now you're strictly a dictatorship, or vice versa, or whatever. New religion founded. Earlier I mentioned, religion dies. Someone could start a new religion. They could have a spiritual awakening and discover something new or whatever. An old dynasty regains control. Someone's family, dynasty, whatever, used to be in control, and then it switched powers to a different family, different dynasty, and then a relative, a person later on, a couple generations later or something, or it doesn't even have to be that long. They come back, they're like, no, I want to take this back for my family. That kind of conflict between them, type of ordeal. Rebellions, which usually sparks from stuff kind of like that. Shipwreck, if you are more of a coastal type area, this would be kind of something for Aegea, especially. I actually put that in part of its history. In my other notes, there was a point where their ships were out at sea, and there was a storm came, and they crashed into another boat, and it washed up on shore or whatever. And the people from Aegea seen the wreckage of both the ships, and they thought that this other kingdom had, attacked them while they was at sea. So basically a war got declared just because of these two ships happened to crash into each other in a storm. So stuff like that. A solar eclipse or lunar eclipse or whatever. Other type of natural phenomenons and stuff like that. A shooting star, a meteorite, stuff like that. What does your people in your world actually think of when they see these things? Do they think it's, oh, well, yeah, that's the same thing. We had one of those last week, whatever. Or they're like, oh my God, this is a sign from the gods or something. Strange omens. Like I was just talking about the solar eclipses and meteorites and stuff like that. These natural phenomena, do they see it as like a strange omen? Are there other strange omens, type ordeal? A strange site discovered. Talking about earlier with the new city founded or something. This would actually be, finding those ruins, finding some type of monument out in the middle of nowhere. It's like, what's this? Or, if they've never seen a cave or something like that before and they find it, it's like, well, this is something different. So that's something else you could do. Trade treaty goes kind of into the economics and resources, and then other neighboring regions, kingdoms, areas and stuff like that. A trade route, how do they transport these things? If you are on the coast, you have ships and ports and this and that. And then if you're trading with other kingdoms within the same continent, in a sense, same landmass, you might not want to send off ships, but you might have highways or roads of some sort. It doesn't have to be paved or anything, but some type of a trail for them to go from point A to point B. Most fastest and resourceful route. Trade war. Maybe people are needing these resources and they need them, and you don't want to give it up for whatever reason. Start a war type ordeal, or vice versa. A treaty, maybe you've been at war, and you're like, no, let's just make peace, we're gonna end this right here, whatever. A victorious conquest, maybe you use the underdog, this kingdom, when it gets to this kingdom for whatever reason, and on paper this kingdom should have won, but instead this other one, did, something to be proud of. A war in general. And then like witch hunts, if you have some magic in your world and it's kind of frowned upon, you could have some type of witch hunt in a sense, kind of go across, trying to get rid of it or to tame it down for people to kind of go into hiding or stuff like that. Now I know I was going to go through this or whatever, but I think I'm going to do that at some other point. I got some notes somewhere of other stuff. I think I'm actually going to go through and kind of compile all that at that point instead of now. But at least I showed you all of that. I kind of talked to y'all about the different things and kind of explain how you could use all this different things that some people don't really think of, or some people do think of, and they're just like, yeah, maybe not. I don't think it's that important, whatever, for you to use in your story. You don't have to use all this information, you know, it's strictly up to you, it's your story. But it is stuff for you to kind of think about and to, you know, help develop your world better. So yeah, I hope you all enjoy this video. My debut novel, The Battle for METAGORE, is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. All those links are down below, as well as it's an audiobook on iTunes, Audible, and some other places. Links down below if y'all want to go check that out. As well as, you know, all my other social media. I got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, a Patreon where you can support me for just $1 a month. And y'all get some exclusive content, you know. Anytime I want to release a new book cover, I will post it on there early for y'all to see before I ever share it to the rest of the world. Which I do have a book cover made up for Sovereign Duties. It hasn't been posted on there yet, but it will be at some points, and it will be posted on there way before anybody else gets to see it, you know, out in the public. So if y'all want to check that out, get that little exclusive content and early content, go support me on Patreon, as well as I have a newsletter which lets you know what kind of content I'm planning on putting out for the next month. At times that changes, at times it doesn't. I try to stick with it pretty good. Now and then I might get to a video I'm just like, I'm going to do something else. Or something might just come up and I just don't have the time to sit down and film like I would like to. But yeah. But all those links are down below. You can go support me on all those, follow me, whatever. I would appreciate it. Also, haven't already, hit that like button, hit the dislike button, subscribe if you haven't already, ring the bell so you know when I upload videos, which are typically on Mondays, but at times I do upload bonus videos. So just kind of know that you're seeing all the videos, ring that bell. Maybe YouTube will let you know. It doesn't always work, but you know, I can't control that. But besides that, I guess that's about it. Next week, I will be drawing a map, like hand drawing a map with y'all. Or at least by myself in my house. Without y'all, but with a camera. This thing will be there. And y'all can watch me hand draw a map, sketch it out on pencil. I haven't done that in a while, but yeah, I figured that would kind of go along with the whole world building and stuff. So yeah, I'll kind of walk you through my process of building a map that way. I know a lot of the maps I make are electronic, and I have showed y'all how I do the satellite renditions of a map on my computer. But this is more just hand sketch. I know there's a couple lands I want to kind of redo the map some, so I figured I'd go ahead and do it for y'all. So tune in next week at the same time. Maybe, I don't know. It might not be the same time, but yeah, whatever. I am too tired for this crap. I'm losing my mind.